You know what's strange about the way people approach getting things done? They treat it like a battle against time itself. They make lists, they schedule every minute, they push harder and harder until they collapse. And then they wonder why nothing actually gets finished. Here's the real puzzle. The people who seem to accomplish the most aren't the ones grinding away 16 hours a day. They're often working less, enjoying it more, and producing work that actually matters. How is that possible? The answer isn't what you think. It's not about willpower or discipline or managing your time better. Those things help, sure, but they're missing the fundamental principle. The real secret is understanding what work actually is at the level of your brain. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. When you sit down to work, you probably think the goal is to spend time working. That's the first mistake. Time spent is not the same as work done. You can sit at a desk for 8 hours and accomplish almost nothing. We've all done it. The second mistake is even more subtle. People think that if they just eliminate distractions, they'll be productive. So they find a quiet room, they close the door, they clear their desk, and then nothing happens. Or worse, something does happen, but it's the wrong thing. They spend 3 hours perfecting something that doesn't matter. Why? Because productivity isn't about removing obstacles. It's about understanding how the brain actually processes work. And the brain has some very particular rules about what it can and cannot do. Here's the first principle. The brain can only hold about 3 or 4 distinct ideas at once in active thought, not more. That's not a limitation we can overcome with practice. That's architecture. When you try to think about too many things simultaneously, the brain doesn't just slow down, it starts making errors. It drops pieces. It confuses relationships between ideas. Now watch what happens when someone tries to be productive without understanding this. They make a list with 20 items. They tell themselves they'll work on all of them today. Maybe they even assign time blocks. 9 to 10, work on the report. 10 to 11, respond to correspondence. 11 to 12, plan next week. But here's what actually happens in the brain. Every time you switch between tasks, there's a setup cost. The brain has to clear out the current problem, load in the new problem, retrieve the relevant context, and rebuild the mental model. That takes energy and time. If you're switching every hour, you're spending a huge fraction of your day just loading and unloading mental states. The really productive people, they don't do this. They work on one thing, maybe 2 if they're related, for as long as the problem demands. They let the brain build up a full, rich model of the problem space. And once that model is built, the brain can do something remarkable. It can work on the problem even when you're not consciously thinking about it. You've experienced this. You work hard on something, get stuck, go for a walk, and suddenly the solution appears. That's not magic. That's the brain continuing to process in the background. But it can only do this if you've given it enough focused time to build the model in the first place. Here's the second principle. Real work happens in bursts, not in steady streams. The brain has different modes of operation. There's a focused mode where you're actively manipulating ideas, and there's a diffuse mode where connections form more loosely. Both are necessary. Neither is optional. Think about reading a difficult technical book. You can't just read for 6 hours straight and expect to understand it. What actually works is reading intensely for an hour, then doing something completely different. Walking, washing dishes, staring at the ceiling. During that diffuse time, the brain is consolidating what you learned, finding connections, moving information into longer-term storage. But people don't structure their work this way. They think breaks are wasted time, so they push through, staying in focused mode until their brain simply refuses to cooperate anymore. And then they wonder why they're exhausted but haven't learned anything. The truly productive approach is different. Work intensely on one problem for 60 to 90 minutes. Not sort of working, not working while distracted, but really focusing every available mental resource on that single problem. Then stop. Completely stop. Do something that requires no mental effort at all. What happens during that break is critical. The brain reviews what just happened. It strengthens the important connections and weakens the irrelevant ones. It finds patterns you didn't consciously notice. When you come back to the work, you're not just rested, you actually understand the problem better than you did before the break. Now here's where it gets interesting. The third principle: the brain is remarkably good at knowing what's important, but only if you let it. There's a natural filtering system that sorts problems by urgency and significance. But this system gets overridden when you try to force everything to be equally important. Watch what happens when someone makes a list of 20 tasks and tries to treat them all as critical. The brain can't do it. It rebels. It chooses randomly, or it procrastinates on everything, or it picks the easiest tasks rather than the important ones. Why? Because when everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. The natural filtering system shuts down. The solution is counterintuitive. Instead of trying to do everything, explicitly decide that most things won't get done today. Pick one, maybe two, genuinely important problems. Tell yourself clearly and deliberately, these are the only things that matter today. Everything else can wait. The brain needs this. It needs to know where to allocate resources. Once you give it clear priorities, something remarkable happens. All that worry about the other tasks fades away. The brain stops spending energy maintaining those other mental states, and suddenly you have much more capacity available for the actual work. But here's the crucial part. Those one or two tasks have to be real work, not administrative shuffling. Real work means grappling with problems that don't have obvious solutions. Writing something new, figuring out why an experiment failed, designing something that's never been designed before, the kind of thing where you have to think. Most of what people call being busy isn't this. It's responding to correspondence, attending meetings, reorganizing files, making plans. These things feel like work because they consume time and energy, but they're not work in the deep sense. They're maintenance, and maintenance expands to fill whatever time you give it. Here's the fourth principle. The brain needs to see progress, not just activity. There's a feedback system that monitors whether effort is leading to results. When that system sees progress, it releases energy and motivation to continue. When it doesn't see progress, it shuts down. This is why people get stuck in procrastination loops. They start working on something difficult. It doesn't come together immediately. The brain's monitoring system says, "This isn't working, let's try something easier." So they switch to checking correspondence or tidying their desk or planning. Those activities feel productive because they complete quickly. The brain gets its progress signal, and it feels good, but nothing important actually happened. And eventually, the brain notices this too. The result is a peculiar kind of exhaustion. You worked all day, you were busy all day, but you can't point to anything meaningful that got done. The way out is to change how you define progress. For difficult work, progress isn't finishing. Progress is understanding the problem better than you did an hour ago. Progress is trying an approach and discovering why it doesn't work. Progress is writing a rough version that you know isn't right yet, but that makes the problem concrete. Once you redefine progress this way, the brain's feedback system works with you instead of against you. You work for 90 minutes, and even if you didn't solve the problem, you understand it better. That's progress. The brain registers it as such and stays engaged. This connects to something deeper about how understanding actually develops. You can't force understanding. You can't schedule it. What you can do is put yourself in a position where understanding can happen. That means engaging repeatedly with a problem, looking at it from different angles, trying things that don't work, building intuition slowly. Think about learning physics or mathematics or any complex skill. The people who actually master it don't just study harder, they study differently. They work problems until they get stuck. Then they think about why they got stuck. They try to explain concepts in their own words. They look for multiple ways to approach the same idea. This takes time. It takes many sessions of focused work with breaks in between. But it produces something that memorization and grinding never can. Genuine understanding that stays with you and applies to new situations. Now, here's what all of this means for being productive. Real productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about making progress on things that actually matter. And to do that, you need to work with your brain's architecture instead of against it. Start by identifying one problem worth solving. Not 10, not 5, 1. Something where progress would actually change things. Then clear away everything else, not forever, just for the next 90 minutes. During those 90 minutes, focus completely. No half attention, no checking other things, no multitasking. Just you and the problem. Work until you get tired or stuck, whichever comes first. Don't push past that point. The tired brain doesn't produce good work. It produces work that you'll have to redo. When you stop, really stop. Go for a walk. Make something to eat. Do anything that requires no significant mental effort. Don't feel guilty about this. This is part of the work. During this time, your brain is consolidating, connecting, preparing for the next session. Then, and only then, come back for another focused session. With a fresh brain, the problem often looks different. Solutions that weren't visible before become obvious. Approaches that seemed impossibly complex become manageable. Do this pattern twice, maybe 3 times in a day, and you'll accomplish more than most people do in a week of scattered effort. Not because you worked longer, but because you worked with purpose and with an understanding of how the brain actually functions. The people who seem impossibly productive aren't superhuman. They're not more disciplined or more motivated. They've just figured out this pattern, consciously or unconsciously. They protect their focus. They work on one thing at a time. They take real breaks, and they trust that the brain will do its job if they give it the right conditions. There's one more crucial piece to this. You have to become comfortable with leaving things undone. Not important things. Those get your focused attention. But all the small tasks, the administrative details, the things that could be done but don't really matter, these have to wait. This is harder than it sounds. We're taught that being responsible means handling everything promptly, but that's backwards. Being truly responsible means recognizing what's important and protecting your ability to do it well. Everything else is just noise. When you work this way, something unusual happens. You stop feeling busy all the time. Instead, you feel calm and focused during work sessions and genuinely relaxed during breaks. And at the end of the week, you look back and realize you accomplished more than you used to in a month. That's what real productivity feels like. Not like grinding, not like forcing yourself, not like battling against time. It feels like the natural result of understanding how the brain works and cooperating with it. The question isn't whether you can be this productive. You can. The question is whether you're willing to work differently than everyone around you, to focus on one thing when others are juggling 10, to take breaks when others are pushing through, to leave minor tasks undone when others are scrambling to handle everything. It takes confidence to work this way. You'll look like you're doing less, but you'll know something that others don't. Real work isn't measured in hours or tasks completed. It's measured in problems solved, in understanding gained, in things created that didn't exist before. That's the kind of productivity that matters. That's the kind that compounds over time, building on itself, creating something genuinely new. And it's available to anyone who's willing to stop fighting their brain and start working with it instead. Try this tomorrow. Pick one problem, give it 90 minutes of complete focus. Take a real break. Come back fresh. See what happens. You might be surprised at how much is possible when you stop trying to do everything and start doing something that matters. There's something else that happens when you work this way. Something that takes longer to notice but matters more than anything else. The quality of your thinking changes. When you're constantly scattered, jumping between tasks, always half distracted, your brain never gets to go deep. You stay on the surface of problems. You find the obvious solutions, the conventional approaches, the things everyone else would think of. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing remarkable about it either. But when you give your brain extended time with a single problem, something different becomes possible. After the first 30 minutes, you exhaust the obvious approaches. After 60 minutes, you start seeing patterns that weren't visible before. After 90 minutes, if you're really focused, you sometimes reach a state where the problem starts revealing its own structure. This is where the interesting work lives. Not in the first answer that comes to mind, but in the 5th or 6th attempt after you've tried the simple approaches and found them wanting. That's when you have to actually think, when you have to look at the problem from angles that aren't immediately obvious. Most people never reach this depth because they don't stay with any single problem long enough. They get uncomfortable with not having an immediate answer, so they move on to something easier, or they get interrupted and lose the thread entirely. Either way, they stay forever on the surface. The irony is that the surface is where everyone else is working too. So if you stay there, you're competing with everyone. Your work looks like everyone else's work. Your solutions are the same solutions everyone else finds. There's no advantage to be gained. But go deeper, stay focused longer, and you're suddenly in territory where few people ever venture. Not because it's forbidden or difficult to access, but simply because it requires sustained attention. And most people don't give themselves permission to work that way. This is where the compound effects start to appear. Each time you solve a problem at depth, you build intuition about how those kinds of problems work. The next time you face something similar, you start deeper than you did before. Over months and years, this adds up. You develop a way of seeing problems that others don't have. This isn't about being smarter. It's about being willing to sit with difficulty long enough to see through it. Anyone can develop this capacity. It just requires protecting your focus consistently over time. There's a final piece worth understanding. When you work with genuine focus, you're not just getting things done. You're training your brain to focus. The ability to concentrate is like a muscle. It strengthens with use and weakens without it. Every time you maintain focus, despite the urge to check something else, you're making it easier to focus next time. This means the method gets easier the longer you use it. The first few times, 90 minutes of unbroken focus might feel nearly impossible. Your brain will fight you, offering up every distraction and excuse, but stay with it. And within weeks, that same focus starts to feel natural. Eventually, it becomes your default mode rather than something you have to force. That's when productivity stops feeling like work and starts feeling like inevitability. You sit down, focus comes naturally, problems yield to sustained attention, and meaningful work happens almost effortlessly. Not because the work got easier, but because you've trained yourself to engage with it properly. This is what's possible when you stop treating productivity as time management and start treating it as attention management. Everything flows from that one shift in understanding.